Today, I sit down with Professor Kipp Coddington to explore what it means to train and educate students for the AI disrupted legal market of the future. I've been looking to have this conversation on the pod for a while now. What could be more important to the legal profession than its ability to prepare the next generation of young minds to enter the field? I was encouraged by what I learned from Kipp, his willingness to be pragmatic in injecting AI into his coursework, while remaining rooted in the fundamentals of what it means to train a person to think and problem solve like a lawyer. But I was also struck by his telling of how AI or no AI, a student's ability to bring a fresh perspective to a legal question turns on the same human factors it has always turned on: personality, background, diversity of experience, intellectual curiosity and honesty, and so on. These are things that not only make the best students stand out, but will also cause junior attorneys to continue to add value within legal enterprises. And that is an encouraging counterpoint to some of the doom and gloom that tends to prevail in our discussion about the impact of AI on training, educating, and recruiting junior lawyers. I had a really wonderful time talking to Kipp, and I hope you take away from this conversation some of the optimism that I did. Hi, Kipp. Welcome to Version Up.
Hi, Kai. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a privilege.
It's really an honor. I have been pounding the pavement, so to speak, to talk to some academics, some people who are out there teaching and training our next generation of lawyers. And I'm happy to say that you are the first professor to come on the podcast. So I'm really excited because there's so many topics to cover, really.
Well, thank you so much. And yeah, I'm not big on titles, so I don't know whether the title professor suits me, but we are doing our best here at the College of Law to train the next generation of attorneys. And so, yes, I'm eager to talk to you about that topic and related issues.
Excellent. Tell us where you're teaching.
So I'm teaching at the College of Law at the University of Wyoming in downtown Laramie, Wyoming. And so I am broadcasting live from Laramie, Wyoming.
So, Kipp, I reached out to you because you have a class coming up that I thought was pretty interesting. Can you tell us about this class?
So absolutely. And actually, it's a class that we taught a couple times before, but anyway, the class is called AI and Internet Law. And it was officially taught for the first time last spring. And under the current plan, it will be taught again next spring, in the spring of 2027. And it used a prior version of the class focused on Internet law with a little bit of AI in the background. What's happened in the past 12 months is AI course books have started to emerge in the legal academic field. And so we're now teaching it primarily as an AI class with some internet law baked into it. But yes, it's an AI class that has the students doing a little bit of programming. We expose them to technology. They're doing projects. And yes, we're very excited about our AI and internet law class.
Well, I appreciate you giving me a sneak peek of your next syllabus. And it felt kind of exciting, actually, to look at a syllabus. It's been a little while for me. And I did see it's dense with substantive legal issues surrounding AI. I'm curious, though, how does AI factor into the coursework in a practical sense? Like, how is AI going to be used to get the assignments done or do research for the assignments, et cetera?
So to begin, I think the College of Law policy here is probably the same as many other law schools, and that is that students using AI are subject to the honor code, the ethics code. They can't use AI for cheating. They can't use it on exams. That is the base case. However, any individual teacher in an individual course can allow AI as determined by that teacher. So for this course, with the exception of teaching, they are required to use AI. And so my operating philosophy coming into the class, and this is an exaggeration, I wouldn't say it is an evolve or die moment for the legal profession, But I think attorneys need to embrace these tools and obviously use them subject to the rules of professional responsibility, court orders, all of that. They need to be ethically rule-based and law-based in their use of these terms, but they need to embrace them and understand them. And that's what this course is encouraging them to do.
I wouldn't ask you to speak for university or have you claim to speak for, academia at large, but maybe you can give me some insight into what is the debate in the academic world around whether and how much to allow students to use AI. I keep seeing more headlines like X school bans AI for students, right? So I'm curious if you could give us an overview of kind of what is the debate and why are things landing where they are, in your opinion?
And so, yes, and I'll just echo the same caveat that you began. I can always speak for myself, and my understanding of these topics is based upon, I'm sure, the same reading that you're doing. This is Kipp's understanding of that debate in academia writ large. That is that it feels different this time. By that, I mean, AI seems like it has the ability to offload what we would call human reasoning, thinking, and that is training that wet neural network for centuries and millennia has been the job of schools. And now that you have a machine that looks like, and I'm not saying it can, looks like it can do some of that, then where does that leave the schools? And I think where the schools are debating, schools and universities, they're trying to figure out that fine line, just like I was describing for this course. How do you expose students to this technology so they can use it and maximize their own productivity on the one hand, versus just giving it all up to the machine and saying, you don't have to use your wet neural network anymore. All the thinking is going to be done by a machine going forward. And it's trying to draw that line. And that's what I think all the schools are doing to their credit. And so I did see what the University of Chicago Law School just announced, that they're going to ban computer in the classroom, it's just in the classroom during the first year. I think the University of Chicago and others are trying to draw that line. They're trying to educate the wet neural network, the human mind, and not allow that to be degraded, but at the same time, encouraging the responsible use of AI. I think that is the line drawing that's going on.
It's a tough one. It strikes me as something not completely new in the sense that I look back at my time at law school, there was already a transition happening to have more practical driven courses, seminar-like courses. And I guess that's always been this age-old debate about law school, right? What role it plays. On the one hand, there's this sort of fundamentals of how to think like a lawyer. And then the other hand, it's training you to be a lawyer. And that's the practical side. Is that kind of the debate we're talking about? And if so, is there a way here where like some classes are for one thing and others are for not? Like some classes are, okay, all in on using AI. Others are absolutely not. We're working on the fundamentals now. Is there a way to kind of take that same approach and apply it to today's world? Or do you think something's broken fundamentally between in that distinction because of AI?
Yeah, actually, I guess I don't think anything is broken. I do think it may be different this time in terms of the nature of the technology. Going back, I think I'm so old, I feel it's like I went to law school during World War I. But, I think it was 1962 or 1963. We've all seen those pictures of the math professors marching around saying no calculators in math class. It kind of feels like that moment. But first off, I'm ultimately optimistic, and I love the educational system. I love law schools, and I'm exceedingly optimistic about the future of the legal profession. And so I'm not blue about any of this stuff, and I'm also not Pollyannish about the potential threats. And I think attorneys are going to do just fine, and I'm very optimistic about the legal educational process. And again, I'm very bullish. I mean, I think about different careers. My children are in their 30s, but if my daughter came to me at age 18 or 22 and said, "Dad, I'm thinking of picking a degree." I would probably advise her, don't, you know, think about a STEM degree. I'm not certain about that, but I would encourage a student to consider law school.
Mm,
I think the law goes back to fundamental human philosophy, thinking, reasoning. It's interesting that the AI companies are now hiring philosophers. I think attorneys are right in that space. They understand what a person is. They understand what reasoning is. And I think that is a skill set that will be in demand.
yeah. But my generation was told to learn Chinese. I didn't. I've done okay. So every generation, I think that's
Yes.
something. And I will say also, just as commentary, I'm not smart enough to give it sort of clear line drawing here, but AI does feel more like a calculator than LexisNexis or Westlaw. I don't recall ever being in a situation in law school where having Westlaw open would have helped me answer a real-time question from the professor, but certainly having ChatGPT up would. So I think you're right. There's something fundamentally different about the AI.
Yeah.
What is the sentiment of your students, if I could ask?
I think the students are, I think they're, I think they're equally optimistic. I think they are equally optimistic. And so I will just give the example of this AI and internet class we taught last spring. I think there are approximately 40 students in it. They had to complete a Google DeepMind module, which required them to manipulate Python. And I thought, you know what, these students, some of them are going to say, no, I'm just not going to do that. This was all disclosed in advance, but I thought some of them were going to say, no, I'm not going to, I didn't sign up for this. And that wasn't the case at all. They all embraced it. They all got through it. They all successfully completed that. They all know Python is something other than a snake. And the most compelling part was at the end of the class, they all had to do presentations, and they had to use Google Notebook LM, which I guess is now called Gemini Notebook. And they had to pretend, and believe me, that was pretending a lot, that I was Damus Hassabis. And they had to give me a pitch as if they were a lawyer pitching to the U.S. counsel for Google DeepMind. And they had to present a issue involving AI, and they had to give technical aspects and legal aspects and policy aspects. And I thought I was going to hear kind of a lot of the same thing. I mean, I thought I was going to hear 40 presentations about copyright. I mean, how many times have we heard, oh, this is all about copyright, copying, blah, blah, blah. And yes, that's all interesting. But I got a fascinating mix of legal problems and quandaries, issues that attorneys will have to resolve in the future, from medical data, healthcare data, to application of the EUA Act on a US company that might be interacting with EU citizens. And it just seemed like an open-ended list of business opportunities for AI savvy lawyers. So yeah, I mean, I'm not saying some students aren't negative. I would expect there were some negative students, but I think students are, positive, and our enrollment numbers are up. I mean, I think there's a kind of movement towards law schools. That's my sense. So yeah, I don't think students are negative. I think they're younger than I am, but that's a low bar. They're a lot smarter than I am, but they can perceive the opportunities. We are risk managers, and AI is a walking sea of risk. And that is going to generate a huge amount of legal work. And I think that the attorneys and students get that.
I think as a practicing lawyer, we're used to hearing people talk about how in an AI world, you need to go up the value chain. You need to offer services to your client that are higher value, rely more on your judgment, expertise, et cetera. And the flip side of that is a panic about what does that mean for junior lawyers? What expertise do they have? What experience do they have? And what you just offer as an example from your class actually shows that even for a student who's not even practicing law yet, they're able to bring their own judgment and their own perspective and create something new and offer creativity by using AI, but again, bringing something in unique that they have to offer.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think I'm aware of your background. I think you did the big law thing. You know, I did the big law thing and then I did the boutique thing. So I've seen, I'm a practicing lawyer who ended up teaching towards the end of my career, but I understand that economic model, those economic models exceedingly well. And I do think and these are not new thoughts, and company, there's a debate out there, Mike and Harvey and all that, Kirkland and Ellis, I think, what was it, 400 million, 700 million on technology investments and the like. I do think, that big law model with a pyramid and lots of junior associates at the bottom of it, you could see how that might be under some stress, but I think probably that's exaggerated too. But I think this technology is going to be empowering for young lawyers who embrace it. And a young lawyer can graduate, use AI, hold out her own shingle and compete with, the Kirkland and Ellis's of the world. I don't know. Maybe it's naive to say that's ridiculous, but it may not be ridiculous. It may not be ridiculous.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a very exciting future.
I work in a house now, but let's say I was at a law firm and thinking about hiring first year students. I'd be asking myself, what are the soft skills I want to see on the resume that would tell me that they're going to be able to use AI and create something new and unique and apply creativity and have their own judgment that brings something new to the table. So maybe I can ask you, for a law student, kind of an analogy can be here applied to a law student. What do you think are the soft skills that a law student brings as a first year law student to a law school? What are the soft skills and background and perspectives that they bring that you think help them, when using AI, really do something unique and different?
Yeah. So I would say soft skills, I guess the students are bringing a wide variety of skills to the table. And by the way, even though I'm sitting here at the College of Law at the University of Wyoming, I suspect every law school is doing the same thing. So I'm not saying anybody is unique, but there's a lot of different students coming in, STEM backgrounds, non-STEM backgrounds. And what this course has proven is that you don't have to have a STEM background to flourish in an AI class. But regardless of those skills that students are coming in with, we as an institution, and I suspect every other school on planet Earth is doing the same thing, is trying to teach those soft skills if a student doesn't already have them. And that would be everything from a sense of, call it, a deep appreciation of the attorney's role. You are not the smartest person in the room. You don't have all the answers. You need to be an excellent listener. We try to teach empathetic listening skills. Listen more, talk less. It's okay to say, I don't know, and I will get back to you. So I think it's a sense of being humble and having humility as a skill, and then being armed with knowing how to chase down those answers, and then always being able to give advice, whether it's in written or verbal, in a way that is appropriately caveated. Because I think there are few legal answers that have a definitive yes or no answer. Yes, if you intentionally kill your neighbor, that is homicide. But outside of that, and certainly in the business law context, it's a whole bunch of gray. And teaching lawyers that they're in the humility business, giving advice business, that counseling role. And again, in the business context, and I was always advising businesses that, it's always easy to say no. No, you can't do that. No, but the attorney's job sometimes is to say no, but the legal role frequently in the business context is to chart a path forward and identify the risk. And, advise the business person, but not tell the internal business client, yes or no. Chart them a path forward, caveated by the risk. And I think we're teaching those skills. I'm sure every other law school is teaching those skills. And it's critically important. I don't think law school is a trade school. I don't think it's learning black and white law. It's judgment and nuance and reasoning. And I think those skills and the Homo sapien are what's needed in the age of AI, which again is why I'm very optimistic about all of this for us.
One of the shorthands that employers use to identify the students at a law school that have those skills is GPA and class rankings. One of the things they look at, right? Not the only thing, but it's one thing. Do you think that those signals are going to continue to be as effective, or do you think they're in any way impacted by AI, or do you think that those signals, GPA, class ranking, will continue to be indicators for employers of a standout student?
So that is like many other questions. That's first of all, it's a great question, and it probably is above my pay grade. I don't know. I mean, the short answer is that I don't know. I would imagine that those metrics are probably going to remain relevant for better or for worse, because
Yeah.
admission committees have to make some cut. So yes, I guess I don't see that fully changing. Is it fair? I don't know. I think I read, again, I'm not an expert on this, was at the University of California system that dropped the SAT and they're bringing it back, something like that. I mean, I think we may be a long ways away from getting away from those academic benchmarks, be it GPA, grades, testing. And I'm not sure AI will change that. But again, I don't know. I'm not on the admissions committee and I don't have visibility on that. I just don't know.
Yeah, no, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. And I'll say, as someone who was kind of a middling law school student who still found his way, I don't subscribe to the idea that your GPA and class ranking somehow determines your destiny in your legal career, but it's a hard-cold reality. And so I just wonder if law schools are thinking critically, like it seems like you are, about how to feed AI into the coursework in a way that still allows the best students to stand out, then I guess GPA and class ranking will continue to mean something like it has until now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think, I guess maybe there would be a concern that maybe students using AI would be able to artificially elevate their grades. So I think there is concern within schools that, they're cognizant of all of these issues, and they want to know when an employer is interviewing a soon to be graduate and that student is an honor student that has all A's, that employer needs to know, is that really what this student is? And I think schools are grappling with all of these issues, and they're difficult.
Very difficult and high stakes for people who go to law school. So if I can get technical for a second, you mentioned Gemini Notebook. How does it work in a law school? Do students have access to tools? Is it more like each professor has a budget and just like anything else, they would decide what they want to deploy in their classroom setting, or is it centralized in some way?
Yeah. So I can only speak for the University of Wyoming here. So we do have an IT department. We have a, entity called the Advanced Research Computing Center. We have access to a supercomputer. But, and so UWIT, our IT department, does manage technology campus wide, and the College of Law is part of that. I can't speak for the IT department, but I think they are looking at, what an AI platform or platforms might be going forward. At the moment in the College of Law, those decisions are made by each professor individually, and students typically would be, if it is allowed, they're using their own personal tool. And so for the AI class, I don't have a Google Gemini license, for example. Those students would be using their own LLM. I will say, and it's unclear whether we will get funded. I mean, I am leading an effort here to develop a proposal where we would construct what we're calling an AI law lab, which would be dedicated computers run by our Advanced Research Computing Center, where we would have AI agents and students could experiment with that. But it's unclear whether that'll get funded. It probably won't. But yeah, I think we don't have dedicated resources yet. I don't know whether other schools do. Maybe they do. But I think those dedicated tools are probably coming. I would not be surprised if in the coming years you're going to see schools with AI clinics, AI labs. I think that's all coming.
Yeah. It dawned on me in your answer that one of the benefits law schools have is you don't have to deal with this confidential information issue, right? So any corporate, any law firm, any legal enterprise has this huge challenge around controlling and protecting confidentiality of sensitive data. So it's actually a luxury to be in an academic setting, right? You're using public information, case law, things like that.
Actually, our clinics play a critical role in the state of Wyoming, doing a huge amount of public interest work for the state of Wyoming. And so those clinics, if and when they start using those tools, they will be facing all those considerations. But you're right, in a normal teaching class, we're not, dealing with those typical confidentiality concerns. So to that extent, it is quote unquote easier. We are living in a bit of a bubble here, I will admit.
How does it impact your homework assignments, the work that students need to do outside the class? Now they're not in front of you. Okay, there's an honesty policy perhaps, but they're not in the room. They're not, eye to eye talking, doing a presentation. They're at home. Has AI impacted how you give assignments, or have you seen other professors make some changes as well?
Yeah, so I can only speak for myself. And so again, the school, just like every other school, we have all the academic honesty policies, the moral code, all that, and all those apply. And so if a student is violating one of those, they can be kicked out of school. But as a practical matter, my thinking is that we would typically give a midterm and a final. Those midterm and final would be offered on campus in class with a proctor, and internet would be disabled. And so in theory, a student could not use AI while physically taking a class. I used to give take-home exams as a midterm. I probably won't do that anymore. It probably does drive testing on site, number one. Number two, and this is just speaking personally, I used to assign papers, independent study papers. It makes me question assigning papers, and I think where did I read this? What school is doing this? Again, this might be the University of Chicago, where if they assign a paper, the student has to come in and give an oral defense. Every paper almost becomes like they're defending.
Dissertation.
Yeah, like defending a thesis. And so if I assigned a paper, I might go that way. I might, okay, you're going to write a paper, but 10% of that paper's grade is going to be what's on paper, but then your defense of it will be the other 90%. Of course, if you have a class with 50 students in it, that quickly becomes unmanageable. So I guess, where does that lead me? I guess AI puts pressure on paper writing, because that now looks like something that it's unclear whether that's the student's work product entirely. Yeah, I don't know. It's complicated, but I think these issues are manageable too.
I like that last approach, because if you're writing a paper, maybe it's, let's say, 10 pages, 90% of the work and research and analysis you did, not on those 10 pages. And so there's actually a lot of room to ask questions and probe, right?
Yeah.
So that's actually seems like a very clever way to deal with that issue.
Yeah, I agree. And again, so these aren't original thoughts I'm having, but I'm just reading what other schools are doing. But yeah, I think all these issues are ultimately solvable. I don't think there's any bars here.
You have to be very nimble as an instructor in this climate.
Absolutely. But I think it's always been that way. I teach administrative law. I teach environmental law. I teach, these classes, these topics are always changing, and you've got to be, and that's the beauty of teaching. I mean, it's a challenge of teaching, because nothing is stale. Nothing is stable. And to be an effective teacher, you have to stay on top of it. And certainly when you have a policy facing class, yeah, that's exhilarating and challenging to stay on top of it. But that is the joy of teaching, keeping a class relevant and topical. And AI is just the next thing. So none of this is really new in a way.
And then between the exams and the in-class sort of workshops and et cetera, there's a lot of instruction that goes on. Again, I looked at the syllabus, a lot of meaty AI legal topics that you cover. During those discussions, have you changed anything about how you instruct and how you do your in-class work when you're going through, for example, a new topic and looking at a key case, et cetera? Is it basically the same or have you changed something there?
Yeah, I would say, and this is why I've spent all summer reading philosophy. If I could go back and live my life, there's many mistakes I would not repeat, but I may have become a philosophy major. So I'm reading a lot of philosophy. So yeah, in all these classes, take environmental law, even a non-AI class, I will invite the students to think about, okay, how is your brain working? And what is the modeling, the top-down modeling that your brain is doing? Let's look at originalism, the legal philosophy, positivism. How is the human brain working? What is a person when the Constitution uses the word "we the people"? Could that also include a machine? Obviously, the answer to that is no. But if you were looking at the term "people" or "person" afresh, could the speech clause of the U.S. Constitution apply to a machine? You invite students to think about moral agency, moral status, go back to first principles. I think AI is calling the question of what does it mean to be a Homo sapien? What is the brain? What is intelligence? And that impacts everything. I think, I teach environmental law. This is highly relevant for the Endangered Species Act. Is that elk running a wet neural network just like mine? Does it have moral agency? Does it have moral status? Does that elk have the same moral status as Google Gemini? I think AI is another sentient being that's arisen on the scene, arguably, and it makes all of these legal topics utterly fascinating. There's a new seat at the dinner table. It's now AI, and what do you do with that? And it makes every law class utterly, utterly fascinating. And it takes them all back to first principles.
That's the word that I thought of too, first principles, because really what comes out of that is learning how to think out of the box, how to apply critical thinking, how to surface key facts, which is all just back to what law schools have always done and need to do. So it's really interesting to hear that. And so, Kip, if you're talking to, let's say, a junior, an undergraduate student, they're in their third year, they're graduating next year, they're thinking about maybe law school, maybe something else. I'm sure you've had these conversations over the course of your career. Has your advice changed, and is it changing in any way because of AI, or how do you respond to that question, knowing what you know about the trajectory that we're on with AI and legal?
I would say it's changed a bit. And again, this is my second career. I worked for the federal government briefly. I went back to law school. I've got an engineering background. So I came to the law through a interesting career path. And so I'm here intentionally, but I'm also was not a traditional student. So I can speak to those older students, for example, but even undergrads. I guess I've always been bullish about the legal field. I just think it's utterly fascinating. You're for all the reasons that we've discussed, and now AI is just the next box of risk at the table. And so I just love lawyers, and I think we do. Lawyers have a critical, important role in society. And many times I think it's a handful of lawyers keeping society together. I could get teary-eyed about attorneys. I think attorneys are very, very noble. I'm not saying all attorneys are noble. I'm not saying I'm noble. I'm not saying I'm principled, but the legal profession has a critical role, and it's always been that way. And so that would always be my advice. I think for a lot of, it's not really a bad choice. You can go to law school and do other things. The way I put it is a law degree opens doors. It doesn't close doors. Where you can make a mistake going to law school is spending too much money. If you come out of law school with $500,000 in debt, and then you don't get the big law associate job, then you might be in financial peril. But aside from overspending on law school, I think there's very little downside risk going to law school. So that's always been my stock speech, even to an older student, even to a second career 40-year-old that's thinking of going back to law school. But I would say with AI, if I was an 18-year-old or 22-year-old, and I would be asking the question, what am I going to be doing when I'm 50? What am I going to be doing when I'm 30, when I'm 40? I would be asking job product questions. And I think for some fields now, that's looking maybe a little hairy, although I think a lot of that, again, is overstated. I think coders will end up being fine. I think computers and software engineers that embrace this are going to be just fine. But still, there's some fields, obviously, that will be impacted. I think attorneys that embrace this have a very bright job future. It's not guaranteed, and some of this will be commoditized. Writing to a certain extent, aspects of legal research that will be delegated to the machine, supervised by a Homo sapien. But I'm very bullish on attorneys in the age of AI if they embrace this technology and understand it and use it in a responsible way. So that would be my stock speech to a young or old student.
I like that. I mean, some things stay the same. The role of a lawyer, how a lawyer thinks, how they problem solve. What changes is how they do that work. And technology clearly has a huge impact on that. And AI, more than anything in my career, it's having that impact.
Yeah.
And then ultimately, if you're adaptable, there seems to be a lot of opportunity here. And we've been talking about traditional legal jobs, but I guess we could also just flag there's going to be different kinds of jobs available as well for people who are more technology inclined, jobs that will be not in a traditional legal setting, but still require someone trained in the law. So that's
Absolutely.
also an expansion of opportunities as well, right?
I saw that Anthropic, if I was if I was 25 again, if I could go in a time machine, I would be salivating. This is a target-rich environment for attorneys that know a little bit about technology. So Anthropic was hiring for their legal team. They wanted a law savvy programmer. They wanted an attorney that knew Python or a Python programmer that knew the law, because they were doing it was a legal thing. And I thought, wow, how cool would that be? Yeah. I mean, I remember in my peer group, it was the young lawyers. That was when the internet was coming on. Several of my peers jumped into the internet, did the internet thing on the West Coast. And, some of them are venture capitalists now and everything. I mean, the internet was a massive opportunity for attorneys. And this feels like the same thing. Jumping into business, jumping into startups, jumping into all of that. Yeah, it's a wonderfully bright future. I wish I was 25 again.
Well, but you're teaching 25-year-olds, so you get to be in a
That's
room.
true.
I mean, that's like the next best thing.
That's true.
And I think your students are lucky to have someone like you to help them understand what the opportunities are. And I'm grateful for you coming on here and sharing that with us.
Well, I just wanted to end with a thank you for you, Kai. Kai, I met you on LinkedIn, and you were out there doing very, very important work. You are a thought leader. Maybe that's a corny term, but I wanted to thank you for what you do. You influenced me. You are influencing me. I know you're impacting students. So thank you for what you do, and thank you for having me on. It's a privilege.
Thank you. And I would love to get students more involved in this thing that I'm growing here. I am an optimist. I always believe in the next generation. And so I learn a lot from them. And so anything that we can do to collaborate or bring them into the conversation, I'm totally into that.
That'd be fantastic. Let's talk some more about that. That'd be great.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you so much.